Well, it's good evening from Radio FM 88 Australia. My name's Jeffrey Shaw, and co-host Andrina Forrest is based in the UK. And today's guest is from the United States. And it's my privilege to bring Andrina into the show, and she can bring forth, what I believe, a gentleman who's doing the early hours of the morning at his time. So Andrina will have a chat, bring out that story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Dreaming the New Dream. And today it's the 16th of November, 2023. Right, Brian, welcome to being our guest this week on the show. And
thank you.
I came across Brian. I was in and out of Glastonbury, as people know, and I went into the frequency centre, and they said, "Oh, we've got somebody that would be great to have on your show, BBrian Snyder." I said, "Okay." So anyway, an email was sent, and here we are. So thank you for coming on it in the early hours of your bedtime.
My pleasure.
Right, so I've got lots of little questions which I'll probably chip in and out regarding the body. So I know you've got a college, the YBNL, which is your body. I've forgotten the next bit.
Never lies.
Never lies. Right. So you've got a college going. You've recently been in Glastonbury September time, and you're coming back in. I've got the card here, but Jeff will put it up.
Just a couple of weeks.
Oh God, I know, it's flying by, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, in your bio, you shared it when you were 15. That you were given a 10-year sentence, I think, and you found ways, and you've turned that around. So would you like to start from the very beginning to where we are now, that some of the steps that have brought you here in a nutshell?
Sure. In a nutshell, very briefly, yes. So it's just a story, but the story is important, I guess. So I was born with a heart murmur, and starting at, I think, age 3 or 4, I was told that it would go away, but that I had to keep my exercise levels down and not let my heart race, but, and to be careful with sicknesses and whatnot. I think when I was 6 or 7, it was explained to me that I have an eddy in my heart. So when blood comes into my heart, some of it spins around and never leaves. So if I ever have an infection, the concern is that there would be an infection and then my heart would give out. And then every year I would be told, oh, maybe it would go away next year. And then, when I was 10 years old, I was told, well, maybe when you're 11, it'll go away. And it just never went away. At 15, the cardiologist said, look, if you don't get an operation, you won't survive having your wisdom teeth pulled. Because that's really the issue is with heart murmurs is you get your wisdom teeth pulled and then you can get an infection going in your heart, and yada, yada, yada. So at 15, when my cardiologist told me that, I gave up on what I thought my life was going to be. I gave up on chasing women. I gave up on thinking I'd go to college. I gave up on thinking about saving for a house. And focus purely on my spiritual life. So I thought, well, if my body's going to die in 10 years, I'd like to be in a place where I can have conscious immortality and maintain consciousness past death. At least Definitely. That's what I thought I wanted at the time, And I started chasing teachers. I found teachers right away. I found, some fake teachers, some bad teachers, and good teachers, and teachers that taught me really neat stuff, but nothing that actually took care of the heart murmur. And then I met a body language teacher, and this body language teacher was actually born left brain dead. So when he was born, as he grew up, he did not understand language. He didn't have an intellect. All he could do is sense the world, so he could feel it. He used empathy to understand what people were saying. He had no idea what words were. And actually, he told me that when he was 5, 6 years old, that everybody sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. Like all he heard was wop, 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 wop. But he could look at somebody's body and he could tell what they wanted. Like he just understood. That level of being able to read bodies is what it took for anybody, and he did it, to understand the correlation between our history, events in our past that are unresolved, and physical ailments in the body. And what he helped me realize is that I was born into a family that was dysfunctional, and basically the family was leaking love. Like my mom and dad didn't really have a strong connection, didn't talk much. I don't know their whole story, but there was not a lot of closeness in my family. And so there was not a lot of talking, not a lot of love, basically. And he helped me realize that was, my body manifesting the issue that I could feel as a child. And so when I let that go, the heart murmur shifted. Like my heartbeat literally changed. It used to go thump, thump, whoosh, and you could actually hear the blood like whooshing, and that's gone. It's just different. My teacher, Patrick Hollard, he healed himself he healed his intellect. By the time when I think he said 9 years old, he figured out how to jumpstart his mind, and he started being able to understand English and started talking. And I think when he was in his late 20s, he finally figured out how to explain to people what he learned as a child that the people around him didn't see. And we don't see it because, we use our intellect, we use our talking to understand the world, and we kind of ignore what we're feeling in the world. So basically, Patrick, I'd say what I got out of that teacher, and I consider him like my main teacher, was that there's this other way of getting information from the world, and that's through body sensation. So if you look at somebody and you feel the love, then you know that they're a loving person. Or if you look at somebody and you feel fear, that'll tell you, well, maybe you should stay away from them. That level of information can get very specific. And Patrick, when I first met him, he looked at me and he knew the age difference between my parents. He knew how many brothers and sisters I have. He knew what kind of job I had. He knew the last time I had a job because I was unemployed when I met him. He could look at my body and he just knew everything. The first time he looked at me, he knew I had a heart murmur. He knew I was a Reiki master. He knew that I knew more languages because I speak French and German and Dutch. He just knew so much about me. It was mind blowing. And he got all that information just through empathy, just by looking at me and feeling his own body. So
fantastic.
Really amazing, and for me, it blew my mind. But Patrick, because he was born left brain dead, he was not a very good teacher. He couldn't explain what he was doing all the time. And so I would go to his workshops and I would just be a sponge and take it all in. And then when we'd go on break, a lot of students would come up to me and ask me to explain what he was teaching. So I would explain it. And then this happened a few times. And finally, Patrick noticed. And he took me to lunch one day and said, look, you're a better teacher than I am. You get this better than I do. I was born brain dead. I don't even know. His vocabulary was limited. So he told me to teach it. He said, Brian, go out and figure this out. And then once you figure it out, teach it your own way and do it. And so I did. I dedicated my life to it. And that was in 1997 that he told me to figure it out. And I didn't start teaching the material. I didn't feel comfortable understanding it enough, and I couldn't get results. Like when I finally was able to get results and felt comfortable teaching a public class and charging for it was 2012. So there was solid 15 years of working on this and figuring it out. And the thing I figured out is that there's a direct correlation between our internal body language, the chatterbox and the things we think about, and our external body language that other people see and respond to. And that correlation can be adjusted or modified or impacted in a way that we can understand people better, and we can, project our thoughts better. Any questions?
Lots. Because I think now more than ever, with the energies being so finer, if you like, and excuse me, things are moving faster and faster. it's being really grounded, sort of to be in touch with our feelings, to be aware of what's going on around us. And, you know, there are so many people struggling out there at the moment in many, many ways. So for me, it's just like just talking to, you know, I talk to everybody. You know, that's me. So it's just, you know, making contact with people, and you see them sort of come alive just by saying hello, because they've been shut in their own world. So, but
Absolutely.
I think for us, so what tips and techniques to help our listeners, because obviously it's being still within to get your messages, and like you say, the chatterbox goes on, and it's controlling that chatterbox. And like for me, it's when I breathe and, you know, bring
Right.
myself back and breathe and focus. So what are your suggestions or tips?
Well, the first suggestion I give to people, and this is very critical, is to let things be the way they are. Discontinue judging the world. Stop judging your friends, people you see on the street. Stop judging. And by judging, I don't mean like labeling things as good or evil. I mean measuring and comparing in order to determine what's better or worse. So it's okay to measure and compare if you're going to buy a car, right? You don't want to get ripped off at the car dealer. You want to make sure the car is good and it's what you want. But when it comes to people, when we measure and compare people, one of them's better than the other, which means that one of them's not good enough. And this measuring and comparing we do, it literally creates charges in our life. So if there's a group of people that I've labeled as bad in my mind, I will naturally stay away from them. So punk rockers, I don't want to be around punk rocker, you know, or blondes, you know, like whatever our thing is, whoever we judge, it becomes a negative charge in our environment. And then we pull away from it. We don't like it. Or if we judge something as good, then we gravitate toward it. And the problem with those judgments is that they're never based in reality. When we judge anything, in order to measure and compare what we see to something we know, we have to compare it to something in our history. So anytime we measure and compare, we leave the present moment, we go out of present time, and we fall back into our history, look at something, and then compare it to what we're seeing out here, and then judge it as better or worse or greater than, less than. So there's two big issues there when we do that. One is we fall out of the present moment, and the other is that we create a charge. And we can create a negative charge if we think people are bad, you know, those punks over there. Or we can create a good charge like, oh, she's such a good person, I want to be her friend. But our judgments aren't based on those people and who they are. Our judgments are based on our own history and who we are. And so that person who we label as good, they might be a thief. And every time we hang out with them, stuff might go missing. But if we've labeled them as good, it'll never occur to us that they are the problem. And if we've labeled somebody as bad, they could be trying to be our best friend in the world. And they might be like our perfect mate, you know. But if we've already labeled them as bad because they wear leather or because they have a tattoo or whatever it is, then we'll never have the empathy in our body. We'll never feel how connected we really are to them. So letting go of judgments is really the first piece to quieting down that mind, that monkey mind, because that measuring and comparing we do is what sets us up to be hyper aware, or what Patrick liked to call be-awareness. We walk around the world in a be-awareness state. We're always trying to watch out for what we have to be careful of. But if we don't judge, if we just let things be the way they are, then we don't have to think about them. And then we can sense what's happening right here, right now, in the present moment. So if I haven't judged somebody, I can walk into their presence and suddenly I can feel in my body if they have good intentions, or I can feel in my body if they're distracted, or if they're hungry, or if they have something they need to tell me, or whatever's going on, I can just feel it in my body. But when we've got judgments, or we predetermine what we're going to say, or predetermine how we're going to act with people, then we don't feel our body, and we don't really connect in that way. So that's the first big tip, is stop judging, see what happens.
Yeah.
And discontinuing judging means stop measuring and comparing. But I that's the first lesson, to discontinue measuring, comparing the things outside of us that we're trying to figure out if they're safe or not, or if we like them or not, because the person we judge the most is actually ourselves. It's really hard to stop judging ourselves, but if we learn to stop judging the world outside of us, then it becomes a lot easier to also not judge ourselves. So, there's a relationship there. I said before, when we judge anything outside of ourselves, we have to reference our own history or our own past to do that measuring and comparing. When we stop looking into our past to judge others, then we also stop looking into our past and naturally stop judging ourselves. So that actually calms the mind down tremendously. And it's the first lesson in the first class at my college. And from there, when we get to a place where we can be comfortable at not judging, then we can start looking at, well, why is my body holding on to old stress? Because, the big thing I figured out that Patrick couldn't quite articulate is that our bodies hold on to stress. Everybody's body holds on to stress. I mean, so anything happens, it holds on. What I figured out, or what I've discovered, is that that's not hardwired. That's not a physical process in the body. It's software. It happens because of a decision we made or a choice we made as an infant. When we didn't understand what was happening in the world, it just made sense to us to pull it, to incorporate it. That's not the right word. It is 1 a.m. for me.
No, we understand. It's fine.
When we're infants and we get stressed out by the world, or we don't know what's going on, that stress causes us, I'd say, we learn to file away unresolved stress when we're very young. And we believe that we have to file it away to resolve it later. But that was a mistake. And my play shop, which is really the first class of the college, explains how and why we did that as children, and also how to undo it. So because we programmed ourselves when we were young we programmed our bodies to hold on to all of our stress. When you realize how you did it, you can then undo it. And so you can reprogram your body or unprogram your body so that it doesn't hold on to stress anymore. And I didn't actually realize that was happening with this work until my wife and I went through a forest fire. In 2015, our house burned down. And it was a big fire in California, and it was called the Valley Fire. We lost our house. So we were both living and working at a hot springs. The hot springs burned down. Our house burned down. When I drove out, there were trees on fire on both sides of the road, and I had to drive a mile through the fire to get out. And it was crazy, stressful when it happened, but my wife and I felt it while it was happening. We processed the stress and felt it happening, like, oh my gosh, this is a fire. And what's the word I want to use? Well, we felt it. We didn't suppress the stress. We let our bodies feel the horror and the stress of losing everything. The next day, we were fine. We were totally good. And then 2 weeks later, when the town reopened and the emergency management agency was there, helping people out, they asked us, where we lived, and we told them. They said, you lost your house? They're like, yeah, we lost everything. And they looked at us and they said, really? Can we see your IDs? And they checked our IDs, and they actually called the FBI came over, and we got interviewed by an agent, and looking at us and checking his computer and stuff. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. Like we were being singled out, like thousands of people. And then we looked around the room and everybody was totally sad. People were crying, telling stories about, like what they lost and how terrible it was. And Rose and I were just like, yeah, we just want to move on with our life. Like we were ready for like the next step. Mm. They did not understand why we weren't traumatized. They didn't. The next time we went there, we had to sit in the parking lot for a minute before going in and put on our sad face. Like, okay, put your sad face on and go in. So here's the thing. 2 years later, there was another fire. Now, so we moved to Sonoma County into another box canyon. There was a fire there too. And again, we had to drive a mile out of the fire. I mean, trees on fire on both sides of the road, trees in the road that we had to drive around. I had to drive by a big propane tank that was so hot that the paint was bubbling. And as I drove by it, I was just praying that it didn't explode all over me in my car, But I drove to my friend's house. She said we could stay in their guest room. The next day I woke up and I look out the window and I'm like, where am I? Because I didn't recognize the tree that I'm looking at. I'm like, oh, I'm at Leslie's house. Oh, yeah, there was a fire. I lost everything. Okay. And then I went right back to sleep. No stress at all. It was totally good. Mm. And we didn't even go we went to emergency services for that fire too. But it just wasn't worth the stress and aggravation. We realized, you know what, we'll do a lot better if we just move forward and not get stuck trying to like nickel and dime these people for rent help or whatever they were doing. And when the first fire, I didn't realize the import of my work until that fire hit and we were not traumatized. And when that happened, my wife and I were like, oh my gosh, this work is amazing. Yeah, this really works really, really good. Like we gotta teach people this. So that's really been our focus ever since. Yeah. I've been focusing on creating the school and getting this going, and my wife has, a real job and pays the mortgage and pays the bills while I get this going. But it's I do not know of any other system that gets this kind of results.
And really, that's what we want now. Like I said, because things are moving so faster, we need to clear our stuff faster and faster, don't we? So that we're not But I think in the past, if I go back childhood stuff, people used to be out in the streets and saying, oh, Mrs. Jones down the road, or Mrs. da-da-da-da, or, that used to be the way. And like as we go along the track now, we're learning that, you are judging yourselves by going about this one. It's all about you. So like now I say, well, I'm just making an observation.
Yeah, but Brian's actually had to contend with Hollywood with the Jerry Springers and the Dr. Phil's and the cathetic processes of coming out. Oh, you got to have this and all the, the psychotherapy and all that stuff. I mean, you had to go through this whole drama where you have to see the person for 10 visits. But Brian's actually saying, excuse me, you don't have to play that game. Just release and let it go. I salute you, Brian. I think it's a fantastic story you're telling so far.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's actually when I do my intros, when I explain what I do to people, the basic idea is that anything in our life that happened that we could not process, so if we were overwhelmed or it just was too emotionally painful or physically painful, what happens is the feeling of the event, we psychically push away because we don't want to feel it. But when we do that, it gets pushed into our body, and then our body believes that the event is perpetual. So for me, the first time I ever asked a woman on a date, I was in 7th grade. I think I was 15 or 13 or 14 years old. I asked this girl out if she wanted to go to the movies with me, and she burst out laughing in my face. And I was totally ashamed and embarrassed in front of my friends. And I refused to feel it. I refused to feel the shame. And so I pretended it didn't happen. I told my friends, hey, just ignore this. Let's just go on and run away. And I didn't think anything of it. I was just really embarrassed that she had laughed in my face when I asked her to go to the movies. Well, I grew up being really shy around women. Like, I could not ask a girl out on a date. Every girlfriend I had, was the Sadie Hawkins dance where the girls get to ask the guys out, to the dance. Like, that's how I got to go to the dance, right? For me to ask a girl on a date, like in high school or college, I had to have all their friends had to come up to me and tell me she really likes you. You know, like I had to really, really be like my confidence really like set in. But then when I met Patrick, I think it might have been the first session I had with him, or maybe it was the second. I got on the massage table and he walked around me twice and clicked his heels and looked at me. And then he held up his finger like this. And he waited for me to look at him. I looked up at him and looked at his finger, and he took it and went boom and pushed right on my solar plexus really hard. And I mean, he didn't like puncture it, but I mean, he pushed enough to make me feel it. And when he did, he said, Brian, the first time you ever asked a girl out on a date, did she laugh in your face? And when he said that, the picture of this girl laughing in my face like came up, and I tried to hold my breath, but before I could hold my breath and push the feeling away again, I felt the shame. And as I felt it, it went away. And I felt this huge release in my solar plexus. And like the world like suddenly felt different. Like my body felt different. Everything felt different. And that was at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So, you know, I left the healing center, went home. Friends called me and asked me if I wanted to go to the bar that night. I said, sure. So I show up, happy hour. I get a beer and I start talking to someone, and we're talking. And all of a sudden I realize I'm talking to 4 different women. They're all competing for my attention. I've got them all laughing, and I'm chatting them up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm no longer shy. My shyness was like just totally gone like that instantaneously. It really does work that fast with just about everything. Some things, you know, our healing comes off in layers, like cleaning house. So some things take a little longer, or some things don't come into view. But the way I've made this really easy is I've discovered this is what, when Patrick worked on a body, he would, anywhere you had tension, he would touch it and tell you why it was tense, and it would release. I don't do that. What I discovered is that when the stress that our body is ready to let go of comes up to our shoulders. That's why when we're stressed out, our shoulders do this. When they get tighter, it feels like the weight of the world's on our shoulders. When that's happening, we have an old stressful event that's been re-triggered. Those are easy to let go of in the process that I do. So I simply help people let go of things that are already up in their shoulders, and they just go really quickly. When I do my intros, I mean, I pick volunteers, but you know, I usually pick a volunteer and I can see they've got something going on in their shoulder. So, you know, one time I had a guy, and I don't remember what the issue was he let go of, but the next day he told me that he had had his best night's sleep in 10 years. And you know, like that's the kind of feedback I tend to get. But I suppose if you haven't seen it, it's like, it's hard to even, there's nothing to measure and compare it to, of course. But my bodywork sessions when I'm helping people release stress from their shoulders are only 5 to 10 minutes long. And Patrick would say that drama does not release trauma. So like we get the body to let go of old stress by showing the body, or getting the body to recognize that the stress isn't happening anymore. And, you know, just to go back and finish my thought earlier, when we psychically push something away that we don't want to feel, and our body now believes that it's a perpetual event. So when I pushed away that girl laughing in my face, my body then thought that I was in a state of constantly being laughed at by girls. So it was really hard for me to ask anybody on a date. When Patrick touched me there and told me, or asked me what it was that was making that tight, my body instantly recognized that it was over. And I like to think of it as a timestamp. When we psychically push away something we don't want to feel, we make it never ending. We don't give our body a chance to put a time marker on it, so it thinks it's perpetual. And when I do this work, a lot of the times when I'm talking to clients, I'm asking them, when did this happen? When was it? And when I do that, it helps the person or the body put a timestamp on the event. And once the body knows that, oh, this thing isn't happening anymore. This happened 10 years ago, or this happened yesterday, or whenever it was. The timestamp goes on it. The body lets it go because it's no longer happening. So I don't even like the term healing, because the thing that's being let go of isn't really here anymore anyway. It's really it's basically telling our body that it's imagining that something is still happening, but it really isn't. And our body only likes the truth. Our body, once it realizes that it's been believing something that's false, it drops it and believes the truth once it finds out the truth. So once it finds out that that thing happened a long time ago, it stops, it just lets it go. There's nothing to stress out about. I know I didn't have to resolve any issues with women. I just had to tell my body that I was no longer being laughed at, as an example.
Yeah.
So the training, as we let more and more stuff go, and this is true whether you do my class at the college or if you get, like in-person wing release training, as you let old things go, the body starts to recognize the difference between things it's holding on to that are old and things that are stressful right here, right now. Because those things do feel differently. It's subtle, but they do feel differently. And by doing this work, we're teaching our body to tell the difference itself, so that our body just starts letting things go on its own. So you could be sleeping, you wake up the next day, and suddenly you realize you're not mad at dad anymore. And you're not even sure what the thing is that you let go of, but the body will start letting go of old unresolved issues on its own. And at that point, there's a kind of joy and clarity that comes from every day, like notice something new, because the body's not holding on to something anymore. So.
Amazing.
It is amazing work, but I'm always talking about how amazing my work is, but it needs to be seen. If you're in Glastonbury, I hope you come to the intro and see.
I will. I've got the cards, and Jeffrey's got the dates up there. So,
oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let Jeffrey put it up. Lined up better. So, I mean, that's what, 2 weeks away now?
Right. And actually, both of those intros at the Energy Works and Body Language, those are both happening at the Goddess Hall.
Right.
Abbey House is closed down for the month, so we couldn't actually get it. But
yeah.
But yeah, come to Goddess Hall, and we'd love to see you.
I will. And then I can give some feedback.
I'd love it. Yeah.
Right. So which is the very first one that you're doing?
The Energy Works, the intro for Energy Works.
So you're doing the 2 intros first, and then if people like the intros,
right, then they can come to the workshop. So
right.
Energy Works is the first intro I'm doing. That is all about how to move energy. So that is for the intro, we primarily talk about interpersonal energy, so communicating, empathy, understanding, those sorts of things. And then if you come to the workshop, we get into like a bigger view of energy, more social interactions with strangers. And
so how long are they on the evening? It says
it'd be 7 to 8:30.
Yeah, and what about the Energy Works ones?
The actual class would be 3 hours.
3 hours, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And the classes are mostly exercises. So partnered exercises, a little bit of theory, some partnered exercises. You get to learn how to move energy with each other, and you get to see, well, we already know how to move energy. We just don't have the words to explain it and talk about it to each other. So I bring in a vocabulary, and that sort of helps create better interactions. As probably without explaining the whole thing.
When you came to Glastonbury in September, is this what you did then?
No, I only did the body language then.
Right.
So body language is where my school starts. The wing release party and the play shop. That's really the core.
So is this our wings that we're releasing,
yes,
so we can fly higher?
Yes, the wings up here. So I call it a wing release because what we let go of is the weight. The weight of old stress comes off our shoulders, and the shoulders end up getting looser. And I call them wings because Patrick loved to say, All right. He loved to ask, do you know why angels fly? Well, angels fly because they take themselves lightly.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point here is you get rid of this heaviness, get rid of the drama, get rid of the heaviness, become lighter, become easier to get along with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Can I ask I've got to ask the question. I mean,
Yeah.
you coming to Australia? Have you been to Australia?
No, I've not, but I will.
All right.
I need somebody to set it up. And actually, my organizer in Glastonbury used to live in Australia, so she could probably work that out.
Cool. Hey, I've been playing with this judgment in my head. Your camera goes in and out.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's not so
Drive
much
you crazy.
No. It's going to your light switch, and of course, your light switches are different to us in Australia and New Zealand.
Oh,
You know?
yeah. You know, we have like our hardware in America is from like the 1940s or 50s. And it blew me away when I went to Glastonbury because the hardware was amazing. It had like these pull switches in the bathrooms for lights. I was like blown away. And the light switches are really wide, like they're really big. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
we have these little tiny. And I mean, toilet seats. The toilet seats in England are comfortable.
Now your
Yeah,
switch there, your light switch, you go different, don't you? That's why I got to get my head around it. You flick up to turn it on, don't you?
Yeah. Up is on, down is off.
Yeah, and here it's the other way around.
Yeah. Well, it's because you're on the other side of the equator.
No, just a sort of mind jump in it. It's like watching the water go down clockwise and anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere. So your mind's got to just popped itself to, okay, release and let go and become an observer. That's what I really enjoy about this conversation, Brian, is your ability to observe the situation and then realize you don't have to buy into it. You know, and I suppose that's what's happening in mainstream media. They trying to get you to rent space in your head, you know, and play that game that they're trying to manipulate you to purchase a product or whatever it is that they're trying to sell you. So you're releasing yourself from that fact and saying, hey, for my higher self, for my higher good, what's the benefit for myself, but also for my family?
That's absolutely true. I usually don't go there with people, but this does create a lot of freedom, creates a lot of personal freedom. And the reason for that is that when we've trained ourselves to measure and compare so much that we are easily manipulated. So, you know, the TV is always trying to get us to measure and compare. That's all they have to do is get us to measure and compare. Compare this product to that product. This one's way better, don't you think? And then that puts us in the monkey mind. Oh, yeah, that is a better product, as if it really matters. You know, does it really matter if you drive an Audi or a Volkswagen? You're still going to get to where you're going.
Yeah.
Right? But they get us measuring and comparing so much and then putting value judgments on things. Oh, I can't be friends with that person. They're in a Volkswagen. I only spend time with Audi drivers, you know. But that measuring and comparing is what keeps us all separated, and it's what keeps us thinking that there's another over there, that other, you know. And so when we learn to not measure and compare, when we learn to just observe and not play those games, it makes it much harder to be manipulated. It makes it much harder to get taken in by somebody's nonsense about how they've got the best way or they've got the best product or whatever, because you can just observe and then make your own choice. Well,
I feel the females are the ones who get manipulated more than the males because of they got their parents, you know, the Vogue magazines, the beauty magazines,
right.
The whole concept of them to be petite, or they've got to have bosoms that are implanted and all the other things that go with it. So I feel that they're probably more manipulated than the fellas.
Or we just get manipulated in different ways. You know, we got to have the bigger, faster truck, right?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
You know, they get us in many different ways, and I tell my students that's how they can tell a good teacher, because I send my students, I tell them to go find other teachers. Don't stay with me. I don't know everything. I know something about body language, but that's about it. But when you go to another teacher, listen to what they say. The bad teachers are always trying to get us to measure and compare. They're always measuring and comparing what they do to what somebody else does, or measuring and comparing, today to 100 years ago or 2,000 years ago. Real teachers are all about right here, right now, and letting things be the way they are. The unconditional love is right here, right now. It's not in 2 weeks after you take a workshop. It's right here, right now.
Yeah.
And it's acceptance, isn't it? Accepting where
it
you
is
are.
Acceptance.
And, like I said to you, I'm putting out to manifest a home in Glastonbury or surroundings, but I'm accepting it'll come at the right moment, and, and just let it go. So, so it's not like you say, like with the fire where you dealt with all your stress and you weren't traumatized. And I think for some people, it may be a little bit harder and think, well, that's easy for you, blah, blah, blah. But if you're doing the inner work and you're clearing yourself, you realize you don't need all these things. You realize in each moment, things are changing so fast that, what comes along is the right next step for you, isn't it? And how you deal with it, how you look at it.
Oh, yeah. And I know that there are plenty of people who've been through a lot more than I have. And I've been through a lot more than I've shared so far. And when I was 5-6 years old, I was physically and sexually abused. And that got buried really deep for a long time. But as I did the work, it just sort of came out and it's gone. And I don't have any charge on it. And that's the beautiful thing about learning to not judge, is that when something like that comes out of our history, what makes healing very difficult for people is that if we're in a mode where we're used to judging everything, it's really easy to judge ourselves. Like, oh, look what happened to me. I must be damaged goods. Or look what happened to me. Why does this always happen to me? I must be blah, 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 blah. That's why it's so important. Like the first lesson is about discontinuing the measuring and comparing, so that when these old things come up, they don't scare us. They don't make us feel bad about ourselves. It's just something being let go. There's no judgment. There's no drama. There's nothing like that. So the freedom that comes from a body that's not stressed out, it's more than just mental space and the freedom to love and the freedom to just be happy. It's interactions with people become a lot easier. So in the past, when I was stressed out, Andrina, like if I met you and wanted to ask you to dinner, my body language would alert you that you did not want to go to dinner with me. So look at my body and say, Andrina, would you like to go to dinner with me?
No.
Exactly. And what do I say? Hey, do you want to go to dinner with me? Like you get totally creeped out, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm relaxed. And I say, hey, do you want to go get coffee and hang out? Sure, why not? There's no charge.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's the value of getting the stress out of our body, is that when I, like in the past, when I had that girl laughing in my face, even if I met somebody who I thought I was attracted to and wanted to go out with them, they wouldn't say yes to me because I'd get all stressed out. I'd be afraid of rejection. And so I would put on the body language of rejection, and then I would get rejected.
Yeah,
so
of course.
That goes away. When the body language stops getting reactivated, the freedom to make new choices increases dramatically. Like I can walk in anywhere and start talking to anybody because I don't care if they reject me.
No, totally.
I just don't care. Like if they don't have time for me, I'm like, okay, good. I'll go talk to somebody else.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in the past, I'd be so afraid of getting rejected. I wouldn't talk to anybody at all. I'd just be like holding my shell.
Yeah.
And
the thing is,
right. Can I just ask you a question, Brian?
Yeah.
Hey, so is there two ways that you facilitate this? I mean, one is the power of observation as the person walks to you, or the way they sit, so you're actually reading their body language. Or are you listening to their words? So the words might say, oh, I'm fed up to the back teeth, or I can't stomach that. A pain in the bum, a pain in the neck, can't stomach that. These words that they use subconsciously are revealing where they've stored their injuries, if you want to call it that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The words we speak is also body language. That's body language is what, the external body language is what we speak and what our body does, what we show people. But then, the internal body language is our inner chatterbox, how we feel about things, what we tell ourselves. And what I do when I do private sessions or what I call table training is I'm reading the person's internal body language. So I'm reading the language that they're not listening to. And because it's the internal body language that's been suppressed or ignored that creates the external stress that, that we can see. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the person to hear the message that they've been ignoring. And when they finally hear it, their body recognizes that it's an old message and drops it. So it's the fact that the message has been suppressed and it's being ignored that makes it makes our body believe it's perpetual. So when I read somebody, if I look at them and I say, "Oh, did you get mad at your mom when you were 10 years old because she took all your toys?" Like someone would say, like, "Oh my gosh, how did you know that?" I'm like, "Well, I know that because I can read body language," But it's that kind of specificity that helps people recognize, wow, I must be holding on to it. If Brian could read that, then it must be obvious. I must actually be holding it. And that the realization that the inner thought is being externalized helps the person also let it go and recognize, like, oh, this isn't real, or, oh, this is old. If that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, totally.
So really your role as a facilitator, you're almost like a traffic cop when the traffic lights have broken down and you're standing there in the middle giving them directions for them to drive their own vehicle to the point of salvation, yeah?
Basically, what I do is I point out to people, look, this is what you failed to feel a long time ago, and your body thinks it's still happening right here, right now, which is how I am able to read it. But once the person hears what I'm reading, they remember that it's from a long time ago. If I say, "Oh, did your mom, wreck your car?" "Yeah, that happened in 1984. Boom. And right when they realize when it happened, it goes away because they put a timestamp on it. I think it's genius. I mean, it's so fast and so quick. The body recognizes something isn't happening anymore. It doesn't want to deal with it. There's nothing to deal with. It's gone. Doesn't matter what it is. But that's live training. That is table training. That's like the facilitated healing or facilitated training I do. When people do that with me, it takes about 10 sessions over 2 to 3 years to get the body to recognize the difference between right here, right now stress versus old stress that it can just let go of. So after 10 sessions, I've never worked on anybody more than 10 times, because after that, it feels like training wheels. Like you just don't need it. You're like, every time you realize, oh, that happened a long time ago, the body just relaxes. When you do the self-care, solo care online, instead of going after specific events, we go after the mechanism. We go after the mechanism that created the body believing that it has to hold on to stress. So we created that when we were young, when we didn't understand the stress we were going through. We just sort of told ourselves, okay, I'll deal with that later, and buried it in our body. And that became our method of dealing with stress. So when you do the play shop online, I teach a meditation that you just do for a few seconds every day. And that retrains the body to not hold on to stress and to start letting the old stuff go. And that takes about 6 months. You can learn the class in about a week. You learn the meditation in about a week, maybe 10 days or 2 weeks, but you learn the meditation and then you do it every day. Every time you get stressed or every time you feel your shoulders get tight, you just remember the meditation. It takes a few seconds and that resets the body. And eventually our body goes, oh, that old stuff isn't real. And it just starts letting go of the old stuff. My latest student started a month ago or 5 weeks ago, and he told me yesterday his nightmares are completely gone that he's been dealing with for years. His ADHD is completely changed. He said that he used to have 4 lines of thought going all the time. He's always spinning his wheels. This. No. And now he can focus on one.
Amazing.
His wife is blown away. His wife's like, oh my gosh. He's like, he's becoming his perfect self. So she's super happy, and she's now becoming a promoter, and she joined the school. And I don't know. I get excited. I'm just starting to like reach out to the public now and invite people to my school. So I'm getting kind of excited that it's working.
Yeah, no, I look forward to that. So is it a meditation that you could share now with people, or is it purely when we go to your classes and then you take us through the process?
Well, I call it a meditation, but it's just an internal mental exercise. And I can't teach it to you right now because it really has, the meditation only takes a few seconds, but it's a very specific meditation, and the lessons to get you there.
Right.
Takes about 10 lessons. Now, my video lessons are only 5 minutes long each. So it's 10 5-minute lessons to get there. But each lesson requires, you got to sleep on it. You watch a lesson, you think about it, you sleep on it, and then you do the next one. And then eventually it all comes together into this exercise.
Yeah.
That is, it's really the foundation of the college. And it's the purpose of what I call the YBNL play shop. And, when people learn that meditation exercise and practice it every day, it never takes more than 6 months to completely reset how the body handles stress. And it can reset in just a few weeks. It's really neat. And I, before the pandemic, I was charging $4,000 US for my 10-month program, which was 18 classes to get through what is essentially the online college now. And now you can do the college for just a few $100 because it's online. I realized a long time ago, or I'd say a couple of years ago, that I'd rather have 1 million students paying me $50 each, than 1,000 students paying me $10,000 each or whatever. So rather than try to maximize what I can charge for this work, I'm trying to like put it out at the absolute minimum, because one thing that happens when we start letting go of our stress as life becomes easier, like the fellow I told you about, he said he used to only watch horror movies. And I realized too, I used to like horror movies and like action movies and a lot of action and fighting and stuff like that. I don't anymore because I have too much empathy. Like it just feels bad to me.
Yeah.
But in the old days, that's what I wanted to watch just so I could feel something, and that's what my students are saying too. It's like, wow, this guy told me the other day, he's like, I can't watch horror movies anymore. Like it just doesn't feel good. And he used to watch the UFC fighting. The MMA fighters, you can't watch that anymore either. He's like, oh, it's just because, when we clean up our body language, we start feeling a lot more. We start empathizing a lot more. And then you watch a fight and you see the guy get hit and then you feel it and like, oh.
Yeah.
So the purpose of the college is really to get people through the play shop and to learn this, what I call the Cascade meditation, to reset body language. And as people do that, the world just becomes easier. The way that the people in my college interact with each other, it's a lot easier and more pleasant and more flowing than, say, we would have interacted before the training, because we're not judging each other. I mean, that basically comes down to it. We're not judging each other. There's no judgment about this or that. And it makes for easier conversations and easier to make friendships. And, ultimately, I think the world's just going to be a better place.
Sure. Hey, Brian, we had a lady last year called Shakti, and she was insightful. It was an hour and 30 minutes, and it was all about rebirthing. There was 27 different birthing processes, and the impact that it had not only on the mother, but the child, as well as the husband, the biological father. It was so profound. I just wondered how she actually understood a lot of stress, if you want to call it such, was in the childbirth process of forceps delivery or cutting the lady so she could bring it out.
Yeah.
So the whole concept. How do you have a majority of your clients are coming from that space of that childbirth coming through the canal and or all that type of delivery? Because it was such a phenomenal show that I'm sure I was talking to so many people about it because it was such a
No, I do address that. I don't follow the same process as rebirthing, which is the connected breathing, which brings up birth memories to let the body let them go. I lived at a rebirthing center for 3 years, so I've done a lot of rebirthing workshops, and I've been through a lot of that training, and it works really good. And it's really easy for people to get into drama when they do the breath work. So this took me 20 years. So when I lived at a rebirthing center, that was in the late 90s. So it's been a long time. It took me a long time to figure out how to achieve the healing, how to get the body to let go of that birth trauma without getting into the drama and without getting into the heavy breath work. And what do I want to say? I think the easiest way to say it is that breathing or breath work is one of the pieces of the meditation I teach. Excuse me. It's one of the pieces of the meditation I teach, and it's a super valuable piece. But what rebirthing is missing is the idea of not judging. So it happens in a lot of healing modalities, not just rebirthing, but a lot of them, that when something comes up to be healed, we automatically judge it. Oh, this thing's really bad that happened to me. This thing is so terrible that happened to me. I got to let it go. But when our mind automatically goes there, it makes it a lot harder to heal. It makes it a lot harder to let things go. So that's why it's, like my first lesson is all about learning to not judge, so that when we are healing something, our monkey mind doesn't jump onto how wrong it was, or doesn't jump onto who did this to me, or whatever the judgment might be. It can just observe it and not latch on. Just observe it and let it go. Observe it and let it go. That's really hard to do in breath work if we've not learned about not judging. That's a lot of negatives. But so, I've literally, since I was 15, been going to spiritual teachers, to Wiccans, to Indian saints and gurus, and I've just Western teachers. I've just been to anybody I could find I would latch on to and learn anything I could. And the piece about letting things be the way they are and just observing them, I found it's really missing from a lot of the spirituality out there. So, I've had friends who get involved in spiritual groups and whatnot, and teachers, and then my experience with them is that they just found a new way to judge people or a new way to evaluate life, or a new way to make those other people the other. Mm-hmm. And, that's what I'm really looking to break down. I talked to somebody the other day about the pandemic and about how pre-pandemic, our monkey mind, it was totally happy to judge people on the other side of the earth. We could just judge the Chinese or judge the Russians or judge whoever, and that could be the other. That could be the separation that we feel, and then that we just be happy with that separation. But in the pandemic, all of a sudden you're stuck in a house with your family members or your housemates, and now all of your attention is in the house instead of going out here. And so instead of measuring and comparing politics, or measuring and comparing wars or some other thing really far away, we started measuring and comparing each other. And so it's got it really easy to judge each other during the pandemic. You know, why are you watching so much TV? You should be learning how to cook, for example, right? Like the attention got focused into the house. And now the pandemic's pretty much over, like trying to reach out again, it's not so easy because we've had our attention in like this. And it's like this, the reaching out, it can be difficult when we've been judging what's really close to us. So,
well, we've been ingrained to the Machiavelli way of life. You know, if you haven't got an enemy, create one. You know, so and demonize the opposition, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, when we stop measuring and comparing, it becomes very obvious that there is no other. It becomes very obvious that we're all cut from the same cloth. And as we stop measuring, comparing, and start observing more, the body language becomes a lot more obvious. People manipulating us becomes a lot easier to spot, and we get free of that monkey mind or that need to create the other. And so for me myself, when I start feeling the other, or when I like judge somebody, I try to do the opposite. I'll go talk to them. If I see somebody who's scaring me, or like got me creeped out, or if I hear my mind judging them, I want to go talk to them. I want to unravel that and find out what is it in me that makes me not like you, because I know it's not anything to do with you. It's all me.
It's my stuff.
Yeah. So like the reflection becomes a great way for me to find out like more subtle things to heal in myself. I remember
that that MBA guy Rodman.
Dennis.
He has a lot of peers. Yeah, and he took it upon himself to go to North Korea, and he got pilified by fellow Americans, but man, he did what you just said. He went down and sat down with someone who had been demonized, and then he came back and said, "He's a good bloke."
Yeah, and we all make the best possible choice for ourselves based on the information we have, including the guy, the leader of North Korea. He's making the best choices for himself based on the information he has. His information is maybe a little narrower than what we have, and it's not the information we have, so who knows what. But when there's a piece here that we always make the best possible choice for ourselves based on the information we have, always, every single time. And then as we get new information, it's pretty easy to beat ourselves up for our old choices. Oh, I can't believe I dated that person, or I went to that school, or I can't believe I bought that car, or whatever. But back then we didn't have the new information. We didn't know better. So we really have always made the best choice for ourselves. Making a better choice, we don't have to become smarter. We just need new information. We just need a different information pool, and then we make a new higher choice. So the information at my school, it's just about giving us more information about body language, about how our body works, and about how we interact with the world, so that we can make a better choice. But making that better choice is easy. Once your body gets how to let go of old stress, letting go of old stress is easy. Excuse me, is easy. You don't have to talk your body into it. Your body just wants to do it. So that's the joy that's the joy here, is that the body never lies. The body always tells the truth. Once the body realizes that it's been believing a lie, it drops it. It only wants to deal with truth. You've got my campus pulled up. If anybody comes to the YBNL College and you can join in, it's $25 to get on campus. That's US dollars. And the first workshop is $50. That's the play shop, to learn how to do the Cascade shift to reset your internal body language. For this year, until January 1st, I have a special. if you go to tinyurl.com/ybnl-glast, GLAST, you get that play shop for free included in your registration. So it's about 21 pounds or about 30 Australian dollars. You get on campus and you can get the play shop, learn the play shop, take about a week to learn the play shop. You can learn to do that meditation exercise every day. And then within a few weeks or a few months, your mind will reset, your body will reset, and you'll no longer hold on to old stress. Your body will start letting go of the old stress, and you won't hold on to any new stress.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And, I created that because I'm hoping to get to 100 students by the end of the year, but it's probably going to go over that, I suppose.
Okay.
I think you have that link you could put up for people to see.
Oh, Tiny, no, I haven't got it. Sorry. I did have it, but I didn't put it in the system.
You'll find it. It's all good. One thing I've done with my school is when you take a live workshop, membership in my college is included. And then when you are a member of my college, the workshops are discounted for you.
Excellent.
So all of those prices that you saw on the postcard, they're 20 pounds cheaper once you're a member. And if anybody wants to be really clever, you can sign up with the tiny URL. You get the play shop for free. And then you go to the activity feed in the play shop online, and you'll have a link to get 20 pounds off the live play shop.
Cool.
So you can do, if you want to be clever, you can do my live play shop for 30 pounds.
Sounds good.
And considering that I used to charge $400 for it, it's a good deal. But like I said, I realized I need this to catch fire because I really would like to have 1 million students next year. And when people
is that the right choice of words?
What's that?
Is that the right choice of words?
No. I'm choosing to have 1 million students this year, and to manifest that, I recognize that I need something to catch fire here. So part of my way of catching fire is to start these sparks. And this tiny URL is one of my sparks. I'm just trying it.
All right, okay.
Well, you've gone through 2 fires, so you know how to manifest it.
Yeah, exactly. Right, we're coming up to the end of the show, and is there any last words that you'd like to leave us with?
Just that your body never lies. Listen to your body. And if it's difficult to listen to your body, if you tune in and you don't like what you feel, then come to the college and unravel that. Because there's a joy in life that comes from having a body that is supportive. You tune into your body and feel it. When it feels good, life is easy.
Exactly.
And you can, we can all have it. And the nice thing about doing it online is that you do it for yourself. There's no teacher to credit. There's no one to follow. It's just you doing exercises and creating the freedom for yourself. So
wonderful. Well,
yay,
thank you for being our guest this week. It's been an absolute delight, and I look forward to meeting you in a couple of weeks' time.
Sounds great, Andrina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And anything, Jeffrey?
Very good. Thank you. Really appreciate it. It was really interesting lessons there.
Oh,
really
good. Thank you, Jeffrey.
A wealth of knowledge, mate. It was almost like the rainbow. It come to the end of the rainbow with a pot of gold there, mate.
Oh, thank you. I hope I see you at the campus.
Thank you. Bless you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. And same time, same place next week.
Thank you.